Hello everyone, and it's the Mio on MMA podcast, and we are recapping UFC Vegas 109. If I have that number wrong, please reference the title, because it will have the right number, but these Apex cards in terms of numbers do run together. We're coming off the Fluffy Hernandez versus Roman Dolidze fight card, and you know what? All things considered, pretty good for what was promised on paper. Was there a lot of impactful fights? Not really. I think perhaps Steve Erceg versus Ode Osborne was supposed to be the impactful fight. I don't think it ended up doing that. Anthony Hernandez, Roman Dolidze, it's somewhat impactful, but I think I'm underwhelmed by it because I saw it coming. Like Anthony Hernandez doing not necessarily exactly what he did, but if you go back to the prediction video, I kind of called it. Like I thought rough first round, maybe rough first half of the second round, take over. Dolidze gets tired. Dolidze's takedown defense breaks down. His guard pulling and leg lock attack does not actually work. Like, that's the funny thing is that everyone was trying to make a big deal about that when they were trying to hype up this fight. And I'm including the UFC in this one, where it was like, you can't deal with Roman Dolidze on the ground. It's like, outside of the Jack Hermanson fight, his ground game has not actually been, like, from the bottom, has not been a significant part of a victory since that point. Like Marvin Vettori beat him predominantly on the feet. Anthony Smith beat him predominantly on the feet. Kevin Holland, he did screw up his rib on a takedown. So, I guess that counts. But like one takedown against Smith, none against Vettori. Didn't go to the ground really with Phil Hawes, except for when Phil Hawes was initiating it. Like he knocked him out. Like it was the thing is that I think people equated his willingness to go for leg locks and stuff from bottom as like super dangerous. And it's just actually not. Like he's not Ryan Hall. He's not even like a Nogueira. He's not Fabricio Verdum. I'm not saying that it's nothing. I could definitely see him winning by leg lock at some point. And that Hermanson finish will live rent free in my brain. But he's just not that deadly. And Hernandez went out there and he put the pressure on him. And it came apart, like I said, earlier than I thought. But it's take him down. If he goes for a leg, get up. If he rolls into guard, even get up and make him get up. Make him get more tired so that you can then clinch on him again and rough him up again and take him down again and keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And realistically, the fact that Dolidze's striking game is not very good means that Anthony Hernandez kind of got to do whatever he wanted here. He scored 9 out of 11 takedowns. He outstruck Dolidze in every single round by like almost double. The closest striking round, I want you to realize this, was 10-19. It was almost double. And then after that, 44-20, 18-4, 10-2, finishing him in the fourth round with a basically come here like domestic style choke and getting the job done. Also, I just closed UFC stats. One moment while I fix that. Thank you very much. I want those to reference. I desire those numbers. Anyways, now what has come out of this has been, I think, a little bit of a weird overhyping of Hernandez and underhyping of Hernandez, if that's at all possible, because there's a bunch of people going back to like how he lost to Kevin Holland. Oh, he can't be all that good. He lost to Kevin Holland, which is weird because they're not using Marcus Perez, which I think is actually the more indicting loss. But we have to realize that he is, number one, he's quite a bit better than the guy who lost to Holland. Number two, we have to come to this conclusion, this acceptance, this moving forward point that losing to Kevin Holland doesn't actually mean much. Just like beating Kevin Holland doesn't mean much, because Kevin Holland has all the tools to be a really, really, really hard fight for just about anyone. He's tall. He hits hard. He has good grappling. He has good striking when he bothers to actually try to be like a good technical boxer. He's fast. He's got all the physical prereqs and like the technical prereqs, except for wrestling. The wrestling is objectively bad. But he doesn't fight to his potential most of the time. But when he does fight to his potential, he's a very, very dangerous fighter. So like that loss just doesn't really mean anything. Just like Darren Stewart beating Kevin Holland doesn't really mean anything. You know what I mean? I forget. I'm blanking now. Was the Darren Stewart versus Kevin Holland fight actually a win for Stewart, or was that a kind of like just a really crappy fight? I'm blanking. Okay, no, Holland won that by split. It's just a lot of people thought that Stewart won. Right. Gotcha. And yeah, I don't have anything really to add onto that portion. And then there's like another part that thinks he'll easily walk through DDP, Chimaev, and a bunch of people. Bunch of people. And to be clear, I think he'll beat... There are very few people I'm picking to beat Fluffy Hernandez in this division right now. Because I think he's a legitimate scary matchup for like Reiner de Ritter. I don't know about the Imavov one. The question with Imavov would be, and Bahayo also, is can they stop his takedowns? Because his takedowns are not that amazing. The guys he is out wrestling, that he is ragdolling, are guys who historically are not good defensive wrestlers, i.e. Roman Dolidze, i.e. Michel Pereira, whose takedown defense game is just kind of like be physical, and Brendan Allen, who's usually, wants to grapple with people, and then Roman Kopylov, Edmund Shabazian, Marc-Andre Barr. Does Barrio have a good take? Nah, not really. Barrio's way of takedown defense is just to kind of keep coming forward, and then you have to take him off his back foot. But like, there isn't really a good, solid wrestler. Like, this guy went to decision with Josh Fremd in 2022. I know that was a while ago, but it's there. Like, I'm a big Fluffy fan, but like, let's pump the brakes. Let's see what he can do against somebody who has the anti-wrestling game to actually theoretically stop what he's doing. Because the guys he's doing it to are either just are just not good in some cases, and in other cases are guys who are like a little bit too willing to grapple. Like Dolidze is another example of that. He did drop to his back. He did think, "Hey, I will catch him with something from bottom," and that just didn't work. So, fantastic win for him. Loved it. Fully excited. I will say, people who don't like Anthony Hernandez fights, this is just not your sport. Like it's kind of the problem here. It's like this comes up with any predominantly grappling fighters. There's always going to be this swath of people who just do not like watching them fight. And I say this not to be snobby, not to be anything. Go watch like striking only combat sports. They need your viewership. I would like to see them survive. like small glove Muay Thai would be fantastic to see that actually make a run and do some things. I'm not big on bare knuckle boxing, but hey, if that's your thing as well. Karate combat, these things are out there, and it's just kind of weird because like MMA is mixed martial arts. There's going to be grappling. Like that's part of it. It's why I get annoyed by people who boo as soon as a takedown is in play. Don't get me wrong, grappling can be boring. It can be dull, but you have to let it be dull. before you start booing it, I guess. Anyways, what's next? I would love to see Anthony Hernandez versus Reiner de Ritter. That'd be a fantastic fight. I really would like that. He's apparently going to be the backup for the DDP versus Chimaev. There you go. Fight as well. Steve Erceg versus O'Day Osborne. I scored this fight for Erceg. We'll start that off, but it could easily be a draw because you could have a 10-8 first round. And you could also have just an Osborne win because that second round did not have a lot to it, if we're being entirely honest. Like, it was 18 to 15 significant strikes, no takedowns to speak of, no real grappling to speak of. So I scored it for Erceg because I thought he landed the sharper strikes, the more damaging strikes. But it's very much a toss-up round. And that first round was very, very ugly. Osborne had Erceg hurt bad, made some bad decisions, went for top control, took him down, got on the ground with him, which was not what I would have recommended. I would have recommended just keep, throwing at him and doing things. And at the end of the day, though, that was just barely kept from being a 10-8 because Erceg did reverse the position towards the end. Got about 40 seconds of top control there, including some back control, and not really any damage, but like at least it was something. It was a strong finish to the round. I don't really have a lot to say about this because I kind of already thought about this with Erceg. Like, I thought this was a dangerous fight for him. I picked him. I was going with him. I was cheering for him. I like him. But it has to be said that there are some serious defensive deficiencies in his game that someone either with explosiveness and speed, or actually just like really good technique to take the front foot, is going to exploit. And there's some weird takes out of this that like he's reduced. I don't think so. I think he's in arrested development right now, where he's not getting any better, but he's not any worse. Like I think realistically, people just got kind of overhyped for him. Not even about like the win streak against David Dvorak and Alessandro Costa and Machinel, but the title shot against Alexander Pantoja. He had that fight with Pantoja where he showed off some really solid counter wrestling. And what we needed to realize is that, okay, fine, the striking problems are still there. And Kai Kara-France knocked him out, and Brendan Moreno utilized some of that when he was thinking. Moreno is in my like very confusing book right now. But this was kind of just more of the same. I would be curious to see Ode Osborne stay at 135, though, because his cardio... Well, I mean, he did lose the third round, so maybe the cardio still went away. But it would be interesting to see him maybe try a full camp 135. He is big enough. Like, he's not a small... Like, he is a pretty big flyweight. Like, he is cutting a lot of weight. But that is that, I suppose. Moving on down the card, Yasmin Lucindo beat Angela Hill. Don't have a lot to say about this. Lucindo was too strong, too powerful, too determined. I picked Hill, and I thought that Hill would win because I thought that Lucindo would get stuck in one area of the game and not have the ability to avoid that particular portion because she kind of has to do everything. There's no ability in her game to lock things out. And unfortunately, the area that I thought that would be being the clinch with Angela Hill, she just overpowered her and took her down and did things to her that were, not good for Angela Hill in general. And she, kept up a good pace, 3 takedowns, outlanded her 100-80 over the course of the fight, outlanded her in 2 out of the 3 rounds. I guess if you're going to give Angela Hill a round, it would have to be the second round where she had a submission attempt and stuff. And she also had that cool, damn it. I'm blanking on the exact combo it was, but there was like this really cool moment where Hill did the funnest thing of the round. There it is. Okay, here we are. She landed a spin kick and then into a switch kick, which was pretty cool. So that was nice. That was neat. I was tempted to give her the second round just from that, but round 1 and round 3 very clearly Lucindo just had too much physicality for Angela Hill, which is not new. I just underestimated her physicality, basically. The ability that she had to power through things. And moving on down, Andre Fili did what I expected to do against Christian Rodriguez, which was fight long, establish the jab. Generally speaking, outland Christian Rodriguez and don't let Rodriguez actually get to his game, because the problem for Rodriguez is he's not a particularly good striker. He's not... His game is kind of like... Actually, more than anything else, his problem is closing the gap. And he's a 5'7" featherweight, so he's going to have to do that. So that's the problem. And the issue is that he's developed this game where like he was preparing for people on the Wisconsin regional scene and so on. And he did very, very well with that. But it really only punishes aggressive, one-note fighters. People who are going to close the gap for him and usually engage in wrestling. It's why he was able to beat such blue chip prospects as Raul Rosas Jr., Isaac Dolgarian, Austin Bashi, and it's why it's also why he lost to Jonathan Pierce, but it's why he lost to Julian Erosa and to Belki Acosta and now to to Andre Fili. They don't need to do that. They can strike at him from range. They don't need to close the gap for him, so they can exploit that and just kind of outwork him. You could give Rodriguez the third round, it wouldn't be a problem, but I think the first 2 definitely went to Fili. So the fact that this was a split decision, bit weird. Chris Lee being the dissenting judge does make a lot of sense, but we haven't talked about the worst scorecard of the night, and well, that's next. That's Jan Matsumoto versus Miles Johns. Listen, I have nothing but respect for Matsumoto coming out of this. I have nothing respect for Miles Johns. I thought, ironically, this is Miles Johns' best fight because he kept up a decent pace for all 3 rounds. His problem just is that nothing really changes. He's going to come at you with the same game over and over and over again, and if you can adapt to it, you can start to punish it and take him apart. And if you can... In Matsumoto's case, he didn't really necessarily adapt to it and take him apart, but he just kept going with the pace and kept his game going with like little adjustments to be defensively more sound against Miles Johns. And as a result, the fight tipped slowly and progressively more and more in Matsumoto's favor. That's why the third round was his best round, even though Johns actually had, by his standards, a pretty good third round. But he got outlanded 50-31. And also, though he had 3 takedowns, he couldn't hold Matsumoto down. Couldn't hold Matsumoto down, like, at all. Scored 5 takedowns, had a whopping 3 minutes and 12 seconds of top control. Anyways, also I ended up in a couple of guillotines and some interesting front headlock sequences. Matsumoto does have a very, very good guillotine game. And the real headline off of this was Judge Ben Cartledge scoring the fight for Miles Johns, which I don't have a problem with because Matsumoto won, even the third round, which I thought Matsumoto won fairly cleanly, is a close round. Like, there is room to say that Miles Johns landed the better shots, and even though he was outpaced, he had that. I think there's a really good argument for round 2. The problem is that Cartledge scored round 2 and round 3 for Johns, and round 1 for Matsumoto. And that makes absolutely no sense. I would say also one other judge who scored this 30-27 for Matsumoto also screwed the pooch here because... But pardon me, there wasn't one. I'm thinking of a different fight that had the 30-27 that I don't agree with. But yeah, so Ben Cartledge, Chris Lee, you guys are... Chris Lee is a target, dare I say, of this podcast because I find his judging to be incomprehensible a lot of the time. But Ben Cartledge probably saving Chris Lee from being kind of the highlight of the show as far as bad judging is concerned. But a good win for Matsumoto. He continues on doing his thing after losing to Rob Font, and Miles Johns continues to be that really, really solid gatekeeper fighter. He's getting better, he's improving. The fundamental flaw is still there, and he's going to be a physical test for anybody coming up in the division. So he definitely serves, even if interesting fights generally will see me picking against him, he serves a very good purpose in the UFC's bantamweight division. So moving on down, we hit Christian Leroy Duncan versus Eric Anders. Not a lot to say. First round stoppage for Christian Leroy Duncan. It was pretty fun. The only real downside for him was he had an eye poke and a low blow in like the first 90 seconds of the fight. So that's not phenomenal. But he was on top of this the whole time. There really wasn't much that Anders had. He hurt Anders with a jumping knee. Anders scored a fairly cool takedown off of that knee, but CLD got up, did a little bit of clinch stalling, broke away. Hits a nice back elbow shot. That was basically it right there. He had hurt Anders bad. Swarm. And Anders crumbles underneath the violence. So Christian Leroy Duncan actually for the first time in his UFC run gets a sort of clean, cool stoppage. Because his other wins were that really awful Pulev fight. Ooh, that was painful. And then Claudio Ribeiro, which was fine. But it was more just Ribeiro not being able to do anything, and then like Dennis T. Lunin, who's not UFC talent, and then the knee injury for Duško Todorovic. So this is his first kind of clean, meaningful win. Because say what you want about Anders, very meat and potatoes fighter and everything, but someone who is UFC level on a physical level. Julius Walker beat Rafael Sequeira. I have nothing really to say about that. Walker gets the win. I thought he would. Sequeira is just bad. Like, he is just not very good. This was his best fight in the UFC. He'd been knocked out in 51 seconds by Io Aslan, and he'd been knocked out by Modestas Bukauskas in 2 minutes and 12 seconds. So to get to a decision here is probably the best work he's done. But he got taken down a lot. He got worked on the ground, and he could not get up. This is Jailton Almeida's primary training partner. It's a bit of an indictment. And apparently, we've got a bunch of Jailton Almeida like gym mates coming up through Contender Series this season, and I, for one, am not looking forward to them. We'll just put it that way. Elijah Smith powerbombed Toshio Kazama. The unfortunate thing here is that this doesn't really mean anything because Kazama is just like, by UFC standards for the bantamweight division, not good. But it was super exciting and super cool. Like, we haven't seen a powerbomb like that since Rampage Jackson. So there you go. He got the win. Kazama was apparently fine. So we get to feel good about that and move on. It doesn't mean much, but hey, if you're going to have a meaningless fight, you want to have a win like this if you're Elijah Smith. You want to go out there and you want to leave no doubt in anybody's mind that you dominated that man. Then we had Jocelyn Edwards versus Priscilla Cachoeira. This was the typical Priscilla Cachoeira fight, only with the one that ends with somebody who can actually hit her and hit her hard. And Edwards knocked her out. A lot of people are talking about how this is like Edwards taking a step in the right direction. And I guess, I suppose. But I think it's also just that Priscilla Cachoeira is entirely reliant on being able to outpunch you. And at bantamweight, she's not huge like she was at flyweight. And she just has her hands down. So, I don't know. Like, Edwards is finishing people. It's just the quality of those wins is questionable at best. It's Chelsea Chandler, who is a tremendously uncomfortable striker. It's Tamiris Vidal, who is just not very good. And then before that, you get to the Eileen Perez, the Nora Cornole fights, and then a bunch of like really undersized or really underwhelming athletes, and Lucy Pudilova, Jiyeon Kim, and Ramona Pasquale. So, hey, you can only beat what's in front of you, but I don't know. I'm not gonna put a lot of stock on anyone coming off a win over Cachoeira. Gilbert Urbina dropped Uros Medic and then got knocked out by him. So that is a very typical fight for both of those guys who have significant defensive issues and chin issues in Urbina's case. And Gabriela Fernandez versus Julia Stoliarenko. Not very exciting. It was Gabriela Fernandez keeping the range and like doing what she's going to do, like against somebody whose only way to win is to armbar you. You know, land the better punches, generally land more of them. Probably lost the third round, but banked 2 rounds, coast your way to the final, stuffed some takedowns. Stoliarenko went 0 for 6 on them. Couldn't even really close the distance all that effectively. So yeah, good work. And not an exciting fight, but given that Fernandez lost to Teresa Bleda and Jasmine Jasudavicius by predominantly takedowns, and also, to be honest, a big part of Carly Gies' success was also takedowns, I can understand the trepidation of facing somebody like that and needing to keep it clean just to get that W and get that 3rd win in a row. And then Eric McConaughey versus Cody Brundrich was a fun first round. McConaughey landed a hard shot, put Brundrich on his back, and then Brundrich kind of won the rest of the round, but I still have to give that round to McConaughey just for that damage. Round 2 I gave to Brundrich. He managed to make things a little bit more brawly and had success with it. Also had a couple takedowns in there, almost 3 minutes of top control, so takes the round. And then I scored McConaughey in the 3rd. He landed more shots, the better shots, and I thought it was pretty clear, honestly. I thought round 1 and 2 to McConaughey and round 2 to Brundrich was the obvious takeaway from this. And Chris Lee was wrong on that. Tony Weeks was wrong on that. And Ben Cartledge was wrong on that. Let me get the, hang on. UFC Vegas 109, because this one's all over the place. This one is just terrible. Yeah, okay, so here we go. Judge Ben Cartledge gave round 1 to McConaughey. Agreed. Gave round 2 to McConaughey. That's fine, except you gave round 3 to Brundrich. Like, that's the key, is that Brundrich's best round is the 2nd. If he didn't win the 2nd, he didn't win a round at all. So, wrong. Brundrich got all 3 rounds on Chris Lee's card, which, again, doesn't make any sense. He definitely lost the 3rd round, like, unquestionably. He ran out of gas. He got outlanded, both in quantity and quality. Doesn't work. So Chris Lee, garbage card. And then Tony Weeks, who you would think is the last sensible spot because he scored a 29-28 McConaughey. That's my scorecard, right? No, he gave the 1st round to Brundrich for some reason. Again, if you give Brundrich a round, it has to be the 2nd round. That's the possibility. Possible scorecards here. 1 and 2 to Brundrich. If you kind of ignore that the knockdown, it wasn't scored a knockdown, we can kind of treat it as like just a good punch, off balance, whatever it is. And he won the rest of the round. So you can give 1 and 2 to Brundrich, or you give 1 and 3 to McConaughey, or you give 1, 2, 3 to McConaughey. like there is none of the cards make sense, is what I'm getting at. But it was the opening fight of the night, and I guess it was just getting warmed up for like bad scoring on the night. Anyways, that was what we had. It was not a bad night of action, I will say that much. but a low night of impact. Now, what we have coming up is not a low night of impact. Not a low night of impact at all. It's UFC 319 coming up in Chicago on August 16th. Looking forward to it. DDP versus Chimaev in the main event. Lerone Murphy and Aaron Pico in the co-main event. Jeff Neal and Carlos Pratis. Jared Cannonier, Michael Venom Page. Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. That's a very solid main card. I'm looking forward to something in every one of those fights. King Green versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. That's a good old man fight. Gerald Meerschaert versus Michael Oleksiejczuk. Not really what I would do with Oleksiejczuk, but yeah, sure. Jessica Andrade versus Lupita Godinez. I would feel better about that if I just felt better about where Jessica Andrade was as a fighter right now. Like that feels like a fight that I instantly think, oh, this is a good like challenge for Lupi Godinez and a good proving thing. And then it's like, but is it? Is it good? When was the last time I really enjoyed an Andrade fight? Alexander Hernandez versus Jay Super, that's fine. Edson Barbosa, Drakkar Klose. I've never been big on Drakkar Klose's fights, but hey, if he's going to get booked, that's fine. Nursultan Ruziboev versus Brian Battle. That's fine. Karine Silva versus Dion Barbosa. That's actually a pretty fun fight. And Alibi Idris versus Joseph Morales. I don't know enough about Morales to really comment on that. Let me quickly look at him. Get a Contender Series fight, right? No, he's coming straight in. Okay. The thing is, he was in the UFC before. Why do I not remember him? Why do I have no memory of this guy? Team Alpha Male guy. He's been in the UFC before. He's Bobo Morales. That's right. He lost to Eric Shelton, Davidson Figueiredo. That's not necessarily a problem. Those are both like perfectly fine losses. But he's not been super active. I don't know. Okay, maybe that's the low-key not amazing one for the night. But otherwise, I think they've actually got a really solid card here for 13 fights. So I'm looking forward to giving that one a breakdown and doing the research for that one and hopefully gaining a higher appreciation for those fights. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to have a look at the below area of this video / podcast. You will find a link to my link tree where you can find my video gaming stuff, my Discord, my social medias, and the fight simulator that is over on the Discord. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you would probably enjoy the fight simulator. Anyways, I make zero money off of it. I just think you'd enjoy it. Anyways, I'll see you for UFC 319.